everywhere. GBS.
Well, it is a good day to see you again, and today we are going to talk about technology. Now, it is hard to become number one, but do you know what is tougher? Staying number one. Just ask Apple. Good afternoon, this is the ambassador. With me, your ambassador, Jennifer Macau. Now, Apple dominated the tech industry for more than a decade. Phones, tablets, laptops, you name it. Apple set the standard, but you know the company is struggling. Look at their latest revenue report. From January to March, Apple made $90.8 billion. That is the revenue, not profits. That is $90.8 billion. It was 4% down compared to last year. Most of their products are not selling. iPhone sales are down by 10%. iPad has already fallen 17%, and wearable sales are down by 10%. So only two bright spots remain here, and that is the services like Apple TV and Apple Music and their computers, that is Mac. Everything else and Apple Music else is stalling. You know what else is worse? The global market is not that bad globally. Smartphones shipments are up to 10%, but iPhone sales are down by 10%. So clearly it is not an industry problem. It is Apple's problem. But why is this happening? A couple of reasons. I'm going to tell you about it. And the first is a slowdown in China. iPhone sales dropped around 8% in China, and most of it because of the competition of Huawei that is eating up into Apple's market. Huawei profits surged by 560% in the same region. We are talking of 560%. Another reason is legal troubles. Apple is facing antitrust lawsuits and two key majors in the market, that is Europe and the United States. The European Union fined Apple around $2 billion, that is US accusing them of monopolizing the market. And both cases have dented Apple books. The company says they will turn things around. They have a special event stated in the coming week. A new iPad is coming to be launched, plus the new iPhone, but we will see whether this is going to happen this year. Rumors is that it have a lot of AI magic, and that the case may be Apple can make a comeback. But the struggles do raise some important questions, like what does it take to lead an industry? How have other leaders fared? And what is the role of the personalities that they do have to play? Let's look at the examples of the past. Let's go together. The phone market looked very different in the 1990s and in the 2000s. Nokia was the industrial leader, and they peaked around 2008. They made almost 39% of the mobile phone sales. Samsung was second place, and now cut to 2012. Samsung overtook Nokia, and they had 22% of the market. Nokia had around 19%, so the industry leader emerged. Again, cut to 2023. At the time, Apple overtook Samsung. They had around 20% of Samsung phones market. Samsung had 19%, so let's recap this race. Let's recap it together. From 1998 to 2012, Nokia led the market. And from 2012 to 2023, Samsung led the market. And then Apple took over. Nokia race lasted around 14 years. Samsung lasted around 11 years. And now let's look at another industry, that is photography. As for many decades, photography meant one company. You are talking of Kodak. In 1976, they made up to 90% of the United States markets. 9-0. It was virtually a monopoly, but gradually competitors emerged like Fujifilm, Nikon, and Canon. By 1999, Canon, that is Kodak market, was shared with 27%, and by 2005, it was 25%. Still, Kodak was a market leader, and that could have only changed in 2010 when Canon overtook them. Now today, Canon makes up to 50% of the digital camera market, that is Kodak, and they filed for bankruptcy in 2012. So Kodak's reign lasted for more than 2 decades, but it was not a thriving reign. It was just a slow death. And why? Another example is Blockbuster, a movie rental chain in the United States. Their first shop opened in 1985, and 20 years they had 9,000 locations. Blockbuster dominated the US entertainment industry, but in 2010 they went bust. They were swamped up by the OTT wave. The likes of Netflix and Amazon swept across aside them. So Blockbuster reigned for around 2 decades. And do you know what is common about all these 3 examples? Innovation, or the lack of it. Nokia could innovate. Not like Samsung and Apple did, these companies brought a touchscreen and high-quality cameras. So Nokia lost its crown to them. Kodak also couldn't innovate, while others moved to digital cameras. Kodak was still stuck with films. By the time it transformed, it was too late. Same with Blockbuster. They did not ride with the digital wave. In the year 2000, that was Netflix that asked Blockbuster to buy them out. That is the year 2000. They went to Blockbuster and they asked to be bought out. And that too far was just $50 million, not for much money. But Blockbuster denied. Now today Netflix is worth $240 billion. And it tells a story, doesn't it? So to lead an industry, you need to know to stay ahead of the curve. You need to keep evolving. Experts say technology doubles every 2 years. For example, cameras become twice as good in 2 years. Processors become twice as good in 2 years. So do not touch screen. So do touch screen and batteries. If you do not keep up, you will be outdated. In 10 years' time, you will be a generation behind the rest, which also brings us to leadership. How does it work? Does this also apply? Do personalities play a role here? Yes, they do. Being a manager is one thing, and being a visionary is another thing. Just look at Steve Jobs. He wanted to disrupt the mobile job, which is why Apple moved the ladder. But today, magic is missing. Tim Cook took over as Apple's CEO in 2011. Listen to an interview he gave around at that time, and I'm going to quote. This is what he said. "We argue and debate like crazy about what we are going to do because we know what we can only do a few things great. That means not doing a bunch of things that would really be fun." There are 2 things we are looking at here. First, Tim Cook is a steady at hand. He looked after the bottom line. He expanded to new markets. He kept the shareholders also happy, which is all true. But at what cost? He himself said that Apple did not do a bunch of things that would really be good. And that trade-off is affecting Apple. Perhaps it is. We are going to check on it later. And it also tells you why leadership matters. Because leaders give directions. They decide what the company will focus on, consolidation or innovation. Apple reached top by innovation. That is Apple. They reached top by innovation, and their focus on consolidation could be their downfall. We'll check next on the next story. Well, that's more on technology. Now let us move on to Kenya, as there has been a concerning development out of Kenya where the country is grappling with a surge of cholera cases amid its flooding crisis in Tana River County. Flooding in Kenya, Tana River County has intensified the threat of cholera, with reports of 44 confirmed cases, raising fears about the spread of waterborne diseases. And the World Health Organization, in a statement that was released on Tuesday, that is May 7th, this is what it said. It highlighted the collaboration efforts underway between Kenya authorities, WHO and other agencies to address the health risks exacerbated by the current floods. Here is a report.
River County has escalated the threat of cholera, with 44 reported cases highlighting concerns about the spread of waterborne diseases. The World Health Organization, WHO, in a statement on Tuesday, emphasizes the collaborative efforts between Kenya's authorities, WHO and other agencies to monitor and respond to health issues exacerbated by the floods nationwide. Pius Mutuku, a medical epidemiologist, confirmed the impact of the floods has caused the closure of 14 health facilities and a shortage of major water treatment plants, leading to a shortage of potable water for 3,000 people. As Health Principal Secretary Mary Muthoni issued a stark warning about the looming crisis posed by waterborne diseases if not addressed promptly. Alongside health officials, she distributed water purification supplies in Nairobi, emphasizing the dual threat of contaminated water sources and foodborne illnesses exacerbated by the floods. WHO reaffirmed its commitment to supporting the government's agency's response efforts, understanding the importance of swift containment to prevent the escalation of these disease outbreaks, and to bolster these efforts, the WHO has procured cholera, interagency, and pneumonia kits for distributing to key counties with the capacity to treat approximately 10,000 individuals.
Well, all the best for Kenyans and the respite in these trying times. Now, moving on to Sudan. And Sudan, from this board that the South Sudan concerns as the head of the peace operations, that is Jean-Pierre Lacroix, addressed the Security Council, highlighting the concerns impacting the ongoing fighting in Sudan and the constructive dialogue regarding the Abyei issue between Sudan and South Sudan. Lacroix noted the political impasse since the outbreak of war in Sudan in April 2023, hindering the progress on determining Abyei's final status and resolving border issues between the two nations. He expressed alarm over the presence of South Sudanese security forces in Sudan Abyei since October 2022, including recent troop deployments, which violated the 2011 agreement and the relevant Security Council resolutions. This presence leading to the repeated violation of the UNISAFAS, the freedom of movement, that is the United Nations Interim Security Force for Abyei, hampering its ability to protect civilians effectively. Listen in.
Political progress towards the determination of the final status of Abyei and the resolution of issues related to the Sudan-South Sudan border remains stalled since the outbreak of the war between the Sudan Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces in the Sudan in April 2023. Despite the positive engagement demonstrated in the months before the start of the crisis, the ongoing fighting is likely to continue to seriously impact the chances for constructive dialogue between
but also has far-reaching implications for the security and humanitarian situation in Sudan's neighbors in the Sahel and in the Horn of Africa as a whole.
إن حكومة السودان تؤكد مجددا التزامها واستعدادها بإنشاء الآليات الإدارية والأمنية المؤقتة المنصوص عليها في اتفاقية.
Now moving on to the Abyei situation, let's go to the World Health Organization. We are talking of the WHO, who stated that it was actively responding to multiple health emergencies across the globe. Through a recent press briefing held by the director, that is General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who shared some alarming updates regarding the crisis in Gaza, Sudan, and the United States. Let's listen in. Well, pardon the pun. Now, as we move, there are rescue teams searching for dozens of construction workers after the apartment complex collapsed in South Africa, with more survivors brought on Tuesday as they entered a second night of desperate efforts to find anyone alive in the wreckage. Rescuers were hopeful for more people being found alive, through the last 7 people having been confirmed dead. That is South Africa. Listen in.
Rescue teams searching for dozens of construction workers missing after an apartment complex collapsed in South Africa brought out more survivors Tuesday as they entered a second night of desperate work to find anyone alive in the wreckage. At least 7 people have been confirmed dead.
Firstly, doing what we call a line and hail search, so you walk through the whole area and you try and hear people, and we were actually hearing people shouting through the rubble. So that was the first point, and then the dogs come in and the dogs do a verification. Once the dogs have verified that there's somebody, we have high-tech equipment that we can actually start triangulating and pinpointing where a victim is trapped.
Authorities said 26 workers had now been rescued from the site where the 5-story building collapsed on Monday while under construction in George, about 400 kilometers east of Cape Town on South Africa's south coast. An additional 42 people are believed to be still buried in the debris of concrete and metal scaffolding. Rescuers were hopeful of more people being found alive after saying earlier that they had contact with at least 11 workers trapped in the rubble and were communicating with them. It wasn't immediately clear on how many of those have been rescued, but 5 survivors were brought out on Tuesday, adding to the 21 found on Monday, according to account provided by city authorities. There were 75 construction workers on the site when the building collapsed.
And that international news brings us to our first break. There's more coming up for you. Next, we'll talk about the Russia and Sierra Leone foreign ministers, that is their bilateral relations. And Trump said there is no case in the hush money. It was illegal trial. We'll also see Namibia's elimination steps on the HIV transmission, and the UN calls for multilateralism, and the Washington stand against Rafah operation, among other news. We have this and more lined up for you shortly after the break. Stay tuned with us.
So through the 4 gospel books, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John, we can know the heart of Jesus in depth.
그리고 우리가 느끼는 그 예수님을 성경을 통해 느낄 수 있어서 너무 감사합니다.
And the Jesus that we can feel him through the scriptures, and I'm very thankful about that. Jesus Christ came to this earth for our
죄를
sins.
지셨고
He carried our sins,
십자가에 못 박혀 주고 죄의 형벌을 당하셨고
and he was crucified, and he received the punishment for sins,
무덤에 들어가셨다가
and he was put into the tomb
사흘 만에 부활하셨습니다.
and resurrected in 3 days.
이것이 우리가 말하는 복음입니다.
This is the gospel that we speak,
예수님께 우리 죄를 위해 죽으신 이야기.
about how Jesus died for our sins. The purpose of Jesus being
우리
crucified.
죄를 담당하기 위하여 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으셨습니다.
He was crucified to pay for our
그래서
sins.
예수 십자가에 못 박혀 죽으심으로 우리 죄가 분명히 씻어졌는데
And through Jesus being crucified, clearly our sins have been washed clean.
참 안타깝게도 많은 사람은 여전히 죄인이라고 말합니다.
However, unfortunately, many people still say that they are sinners.
Everywhere. GBS.
Welcome back. You are still watching The Ambassador GBS Global, and we are glad to have you join us today. Now, as we continue, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and his counterpart from Sierra Leone, that is Timothy Kaba, recently met in Moscow to bolster bilateral ties between their countries. The meeting between Lavrov and Kaba focused on enhancing cooperation and friendship between Russia and Sierra Leone, through Kaba taking the opportunity to extend his congratulations to Russia's President Vladimir Putin and his re-election victory and subsequent inauguration. Lavrov described Sierra Leone as a long-standing and dependable partner for Russia in Africa, announcing plans to broaden diplomatic ties engagements by establishing new missions across the African continent, through Freetown being a priority for this year. Listen.
Today, I'm very pleased to be here to help deepen and strengthen cooperation between our countries.
И укреплению сотрудничества между нашими странами.
And I'd like to congratulate President Vladimir Putin on his confident victory and his inauguration today, and I wish him and all the Russian people further prosperity.
И пожелать ему и всему народу.
Lavrov underscored Sierra Leone's status as Russia's steadfast partner in Africa, emphasizing the significance of strengthening ties through enhanced diplomatic engagement on the African continent, including Freetown. In Freetown, we expect to do this before the end of this year. All the necessary decisions have been made. It is necessary to implement them, which is a practical task, and we're working on it.
Well, that was quick for Sierra Leone after just Russia, Vladimir Putin was sworn in. Now, moving on, have you ever heard of the case of hush money? Well, former U.S. President Donald Trump claimed there was no case against him during the ongoing hush money trial in New York on Tuesday, after a former adult film star, Stormy Daniels, testified earlier in the day. Trump also stated that he alleged hush money was legal expense, and that also was approved by all agencies same time, noting the series of pro-Palestine protests on campuses, supposing the country is on fire. During her testimony, Daniels stated she hated Trump and wanted him to be held accountable, while claiming she had sexual violation with him in 2006, which he denied vehemently.
The country is on fire. There are protests all over the country. I've never seen anything like this. Many graduation ceremonies are being canceled. They're canceled, as you know, in Colombia. They're canceling a lot of them. And we have a president that just... This was approved by all agencies. Everybody saw this. There was nothing being hidden at all. That's what they're all writing now. There's been nothing hidden. And it went through agencies, and I guess it went through the IRS also. It went through IRS. It went through the FEC. It went through everything. With all that's going on, they have no case. Every single legal scholar that I see, I mean, maybe there's somebody out there, some whack job, but for virtually everyone that I've seen, I said there's absolutely no case. It's a case that shouldn't have been brought. The previous DA wouldn't bring it. Bragg didn't want to bring it, and he brought it because I'm running in number one place. This all comes out of the White House and crooked Joe Biden. This comes from the White House, and it's all Biden because it's an attack on his political opponent. That hasn't happened in this country. It does happen in third world countries, but it hasn't happened in this country, and it's a shame. And the trial is a very unfair trial. It's a very, very unfair trial.
Well, that's Trump for you. Now moving on to Namibia. Namibia has become the first country in Africa and the first high-burden country in the world to reach a key milestone in eliminating mother-to-child transmission of both HIV and viral hepatitis B. This is according to the World Health Organization WHO statement that was done on Monday. Namibia is home to more than 200,000 people living with HIV, and new infections have been excessively impacting many, especially women. Let's listen in.
It was stated that 2/3 of new cases of hepatitis B worldwide occur in Eastern and Southern Africa, which also harbor more than half of the world's HIV cases. More than 200,000 people in Namibia are HIV positive, and new infections have been disproportionately affecting many people, especially women. In the past 20 years, there has been a 70% decrease in vertical transmission of HIV due to increased access to treatment and nearly universal availability of HIV testing for expectant mothers. Just 4% of infants born to HIV-positive moms contracted the virus in 2022. Additionally, nearly 80% of newborns received their hepatitis B vaccination on schedule, which is one of the most important success indicators on the route to eradication. Pregnancy, child health, and sexual and reproductive health services are all incorporated into primary health care in Namibia, where there is also widespread access to free clinical services and support.
Well, thumb up to Namibia. Now, there have also been a controversy in the Rafah invasion, as U.S. lately say they are not going to support Israel on this. Now, speaking at a briefing in Washington on Monday, United States Department spokesperson Matthew Miller stated that the United States could not support the IDF operation in Rafah as it is currently envisioned. According to the White House, Joe Biden held a telephone talks with Israel Prime Minister, that is Benjamin Netanyahu, on Monday, to whom he reiterated his negative stance on the ground operation in Rafah. According to the media reports, Miller stated and shared that the U.S. President Joe Biden opposed sending U.S. forces to Ukraine, noting that Washington was not going to adjust to the readiness of the nuclear forces and there was no facts proving that Russia was preparing to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Despite concerns about the Russia aggression, Miller underlined that there currently was no evidence to suggest an imminent nuclear threat from Russia.
We cannot support an operation in Rafah as it is currently envisioned. We have made clear, the Secretary made this clear in his conversations with Prime Minister Netanyahu and other members of the Israeli government last week, that we have not seen a humanitarian plan that is credible and that is implementable. And we believe a military operation in Rafah right now would dramatically increase the suffering of the Palestinian people, would lead to an increase in loss of civilian life. Ceasefire is absolutely achievable. There has been a deal on the table, a proposal on the table that would achieve an immediate ceasefire and the release of hostages. Certainly, a Rafah operation would make it incredibly difficult to sustain the increases in humanitarian assistance that we have been able to deliver over the past few weeks since the president's call with Prime Minister Netanyahu on April 4th. But the problem now is there's such limited places for them to go inside Gaza, and there is no effective way to distribute aid to them and make sure they have access to shelter, access to sanitation in the places that they would go if, say, you had hundreds of thousands of people moving from Rafah. That said, we have not seen any reason to adjust our own nuclear posture and in response to these announcements, nor any indications that Russia is preparing to use.
Well, so much on the U.S. Rafah invasion, and we are going to keep you updated on the same. Now, let us go to a certain thread that has been coming on the journalists. As the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Ravina Shamdasani, expressed deep concerns over the escalating crackdown on journalists in Russia. Delivering a stark message in Geneva on Tuesday, Shamdasani went on to underscore the severity of the situation, highlighting the alarming rise in the imprisoned journalists since the invasion of Ukraine in February 24, 2022. According to her statement, at least 30 journalists are currently detained in Russia under a variety of criminal charges, including terrorism, radicalism, and the dissemination knowingly false information about the armed forces among the detained. 12 journalists are serving prison sentences ranging from 5.5 to 22 years, while other charges levied from the range from espionage and possession of illegal substances. As a result of access to independent information within Russia, it is increasingly restricted, hindering the public ability to make fully informed decisions. Now here's the report.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, is concerned by the increasing number of journalists charged, convicted, and jailed in Russia for their independent reporting in what appears to be an intensification of a crackdown on dissenting voices. The continuous attacks on free speech and the criminalization of independent journalism in Russia is very troubling. Crackdown on journalists' independent work must immediately cease, and the right to inform, which is a key component of the right to freedom of expression, needs to be upheld. At least 30 journalists are currently detained in Russia under a variety of criminal charges, and these include charges ranging from terrorism, extremism, disseminating knowingly false information about the armed forces, spying, treason, extortion, infringing upon people's rights, violating the provisions of the law on foreign agents, inciting mass disturbances, illegal possession of explosives, and illegal possession of drugs. Out of the 30 reporters deprived of their liberty, 12 are serving prison sentences ranging from 5.5 to 22 years in prison. The Russian authorities appear to be attempting to further strengthen control of the narrative, both around domestic issues and around the conduct of hostilities in Ukraine. As a result, people in Russia have increasingly restricted access to non-state information and viewpoints.
And that news brings us to the end of our Ambassador GBS Global News. It's been a pleasure having you on board, joining us to the end. And just to do a recap for you, we've talked about the Apple revenue rat. We've seen that technology evolves every 2 years and you have to stay ahead. 2 years, otherwise you are going to be left behind. And also there's more coming up from Kenya about, concerning the cholera causes because of the amidst the flooding crisis that has been happening. We'll keep you updated. And the UN South Sudan Abbey situation will give you more tomorrow. Also, the WHO Health Emergencies Alarm Crisis. We are going to give you more on it as you continue keeping it at the ambassador. And also the South Africa rescue operations that continue according to the building that collapsed in the nation. We wish them all the best in this time of recovery, and we are going to bring you more on the development of the same. And also, UN chief condemned Israel offensive in Rafah. There's more coming up for you as you keep it at the ambassador on the commendations of the same. And also the Russian and the Sierra Leone operation bilateral ties, as foreign minister discussed bilateral ties with Russia that was so quick after Vladimir Putin just was sworn in as a president. Well, we wish them all the same. And also concerning the hash case money, Trump said there is no case here as the hash money was illegal expense. That's what he said, just illegal expense. We are going to keep you more updated on the same. Also, South Sudan Tambura displaced population, especially this time, and Namibia, thumbs up to them, eliminating mother-to-child HIV transmission. That was quite a development coming from Namibia. Also, the UN call for the multilateralism and the IEA need for a concrete step in nuclear talks. That has been going on lately today, especially between these escalations that could only be able to bring nuclear on board. We are going to keep you updated on the same. And the UN concern over the crackdown of journalists in Russia, an issue that has been taking long. We are going to keep you updated more on this at the ambassador, where we keep you ahead of all developments as we bring you all the latest. Well, I've been your ambassador, Jennifer Macau, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the ambassador, GBS Global. Tomorrow, same time, same place, from Monday to Friday, 8:1 p.m. And may you all have a superb and the most beautiful and a wonderful afternoon. See you then.